Good afternoon, year six. I hope you're well and have had a good day so far. I hope you've done some really good editing of your English, that you've worked hard on your algebra and you continue with the work on private peaceful. I also hope you've managed to survive my French pronunciation if you've listened to that. If not, then I hope you're about to enjoy that. For today's word in spelling, we're going to be thinking about words which are kind of grown from a family word, a core word that they're all linked to. We're going to think, like we've done in our science, about Latin as a root to lots of language, and we're going to be successful by checking our previous spelling, so looking at the words from last week that had those E's and those I's in. We're going to look at some new spellings that all contain, the MIT root element. We're going to practice these new spellings, and eventually we're going to use these new spellings in sentences, and hopefully you're going to use these new spellings across your work this week. Within our writing then today, first of all, I'd like you to look at these 10 different spellings. So we've got deceive, conceive, receive, perceive, sealing, receipt, protein, caffeine, seize, and neither. So of these 10, each one's been written correctly once and incorrectly once. Can you circle on your sheet the correct versions? Have a look about which ones are correct and which ones are incorrect. So as you look through your sheet, I'll remind you, deceive is when you're a bit sneaky. You might hide something from somebody. Conceive, so you're doing these on your sheet, which one you think is correct. Conceive is when you think of something, or when you generate something. You're the start of something when you conceive it. Receive is when you get something, when you receive something. Perceive is when you view something, what you think of something, your perception, your view of something. Ceiling is the indoor of the roof, okay, the element of a room which is indoors, but at the top of a room is the ceiling. Receipt is the thing you might get when you receive something to show that you've paid for it. Protein is the element within meat, for example, that allows us to become stronger. And sometimes people consume protein separately to allow them to become muscular. So I'm thinking, Jeremiah, when you're doing your running picture for us from your PDW work, maybe you've been consuming lots of protein to build that muscle mass. We've got caffeine as well, which many adults, for example, like to consume within coffee or tea for many reasons, but sometimes it's because they're a bit tired. Seize then is to grab something, normally something that maybe the current holder doesn't want you to seize. And finally, neither, when you're unsure of which one of two or three things that you want and you decide to the two things that you don't want either of them, you want neither. Okay, so neither. So let's have a look which ones are correct. Deceive is the single C. Okay, deceive is a single C. Conceive is a C at the beginning of it, not a K. Receive as a single, has an E before the I. That was the pattern we looked at last week. Perceive has a single C. Ceiling is spelt correctly both times. I'm sorry about that, but it's the one on the right I've circled. You could circle either. Receipt is the C before the EI, not an S, although sometimes it's a confusing sound, but it's receipt. Same as ceiling. The sound is a little confusing. Protein is a single T, whereas caffeine is a double F, and that's why it's confusing and why we must learn them through practicing and through usage as well as through patterns. C's is a Z rather than an S, and neither has the TH rather than the V within it. Okay, that's our recall for last week. So that's looking back to last week. Then this week's root word that we're looking at is the MIT. And this links to Latin. So when I was talking about our science, if you think about Carl Linnaeus, his binomial system of naming of animals was based on Latin. And the reason for that was around the world, lots of countries had or were still speaking Latin. And also science was primarily communicated about by using Latin as the language. So MIT, MIT. Now, MIT comes from the Latin word that means to send. So in many words, it can also mean to miss. Okay, so MIT. Okay, MIT. Okay, so what I'd like you to spend a minute thinking about is, can you think about any words which consist of the word MIT, so contain it? I'll give you an example of two. I'd be correct if I put submit because it's got I'm trying to find it on my finger, MIT, but I would be wrong if I put mighty because although it's got MI, it's not then with the G and the H, okay? So it's where it's MIT next to each other, next to the three letters, okay? See if you can spend a minute thinking as many words as you can that contain, MIT. Off you go. So just 1 minute to think of all those words which contain MIT. Half your time up now, guys. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going. Last few seconds. Keep going. Keep going. Last few seconds. How many did you get? Did you manage to get 5? Can you commit that you got 5? Were you permitting yourself the chance to get more than 5? Let's see. Okay, let's see then. With our root word, so our root is this idea of MIT, mit, and that stems from that Latin, which means miss or to send. So that Latin word, miss or to send. Okay, so words which link to that now in the English language currently. Commit. So when we commit to something, we promise to do it. A committee is a group of people who might make decisions. They might make a commitment to do something. So you can say a committee. Transmit is a word that we've seen a lot recently due to COVID. We don't want it to transmit from one person to another. That's why people wear masks, why people distance. So we don't transmit, we don't spread it from one person to another. Submit, when we submit something, it has 2 meanings really. One is that we pass something on to somebody to see if it's accepted. So you might submit an application. Another is that you submit when somebody's more important than you, whether that's because they're a king or a queen or it's the head of a faith. You listen to them, you follow their instructions, you submit to their authority. Emit is when something is let off. So, for example, vapor or fumes from a car, it's emitted, it's let off, it's let out of it. Commitment is this promise, it's a synonym for promise, a commitment to something. Intermittent is when something only happens irregularly, so it doesn't happen frequently, happens sometimes, not all the time. You're getting these Zoom calls every day with us. If we were only doing them every now and again, they'd be intermittent, whereas at the moment they're regular. Permit is when you allow something to happen, you permit it to happen, you allow it to happen. Unremitting is something that just keeps on going and going and going and going. And Evo's there saying, Mr. Spring is unremitting with his moaning about handwriting and one square, one digit. Unremitting teacher keeps going and going and going. And omit is when we don't include something, when we move something out of something. For example, if we've got a World Cup of footballers and we've got 30 of them we've taken to France, but there's only 23 allowed in the squad, we'd omit 7 of them, we'd leave them out, we might send them back to England. Okay, we omit something. Okay, so that's the meaning of those words. Let's see if you can match this guy's attempts. Now, this guy, Mr. Whoops, he's having a really whoopsie day. He's fallen over. He's got no clothes on apart from gloves and socks. And he's not sure whether these words are correctly defined. So he's put these definitions next to them. He's got transmit, meaning to discharge or a gas or a sound. Commitment to broadcast or send out. Emit, to leave out or exclude. Permit is the state of being dedicated. Intermittent is to officially allow someone. Omit is occurring at regular intervals, irregular intervals. He's wrong across the piece. Can you mix them up so they're correct? Can you put them back in the correct order, please? See if you can do it. Have a look. Have a think. Are you able to correct them? Let's see how you've done. Don't need to write it down. Just do it in your head. Transmit then is to broadcast or to send out. You transmit something. You send it out. You transmit a radio signal. Commitment is being dedicated. Emit is when you discharge gas like a car or a sound. Or if you think about my smelly dog in my Just So story, it was emitting an odor. Permit is when you allow something to happen. Intermittent is that irregular idea, so the antonym of regular. And omit is to leave out or exclude. So hopefully you got those definitions correct. Now what I'd like you to do is to practice them. First of all, then you've got commit. So we'll just say them. So I'll say it, you say it. Commit, committee, transmit, submit, commitment, emit, permit, intermittent, emit, and unremitting. So we've got those 10 words which I'd like you to initially just say. Once you've done that, you're going to get your sheet. You're going to look at the ones on the left-hand side. You're going to read them 5, 6, 7, 8 times. Commit, committee, transmit, submit, commitment, emit, permit, intermittent, emit, and unremitting. Then you're going to cover them. Then you're going to practice them. If you made a mistake, you're going to practice it again next to it. If you got it right, you're still going to practice it 3 times, like Layla and like Talia are doing every week, and it's great to see you practicing. Then what you're going to do with them is try and use them in sentences. I'm sorry, this isn't very clear. If you want to go, you will need to submit your application. So you might be wanting to go on a holiday where you win the application for the holiday. So if you want to go, comma, you will submit your application. Second one, old cars, lovely job like Jeremiah Imani and Annalie are doing with an embedded relative clause here. So old cars, which were built more than 50 years ago, comma, emit more fumes. Okay, so we've got the idea of the extra information in the middle, but the key word in there is emit. We're using that piece of language. Right, guys, have a go at using those spellings on your spelling sheets, practicing them. Also, please do have a go at using them in your English, your reading responses. Looking forward to seeing them. Thank you, Year 6. Bye-bye.